welcome to Sparks of Love. Thank you for coming back. My name is Jerri Lynn Sparks, and this is the podcast called Sparks of Love. Today, we're going to be discussing why aren't more people getting married, the state of love in modern times. And joining me, I have guests of opportunity. We have Rock Vox studio owner Scott Fitzgerald with us.
Thank you.
And then we have Evan King, who is the producer of Sparks of Love.
How's it going?
Right. He's also a news photographer for CBS Rochester WROC. So really happy to have the two of you joining me as we discuss the state of love, and I can't wait to hear the male perspective on this. I know that Scott...
I don't think you want to.
I do. This is my year-long quest. I really want to know what love is.
So 2 days ago was my 21st wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
Happy anniversary,
wow.
Thank you.
21st. So I was technically married 22 years, so in one more year you'll be even with me. Not that it's a contest. Yeah, but one of the things I have been trying to figure out, just for the listeners know, is really what love is, because I think you have to define it if you're going to achieve it. And I know that Lou Graham has been a guest of Scott, so I'm hoping we can get him on here. That would be awesome.
We'll try.
Well, he sings about he wants to know what love is, so I identify really strongly with Lou Graham.
You think about Lou Graham wrote like the anthems of love from the 80s, like from my childhood.
Yes.
I remember sitting at the 8th grade dance listening to Foreigner songs.
Yes.
Like going, I wish I were dancing with some girl.
Yes.
But instead I was sitting in the corner with huge sweat rings on my shirt because I was an awkward 13-year-old and
my goodness.
overactive sweat glands.
Well,
My generation had Yay. So
Yay?
we can
What is?
really...
I don't know Yay.
Oh,
What
is that
Yay?
Kanye West?
Yeah, we had
Kanye.
that music video he did with Kim Kardashian. That was the love. That was the love song of our generation.
Oh, this explains a lot.
Terrible.
Evan.
That's a terrible role model.
He is. He's terrible.
Oh my God. I remember when that song, I Want to Know What Love Is, first came out. It had the big boom boxes, like you saw in Say Anything with John Cusack. He's holding it over his head for Ione Sky outside the window. And I just remember crying. I actually just cried. That song, to this day, I can hear it. And there's a scene in Seinfeld where the character hears Desperado and everyone has to stop. And Elaine kind of breaks up with him because he's so serious about the song Desperado. I want to know
the
what
Eagles
love
song, Desperado.
Yes. And I always thought that was such a hilarious scene, but then I realized there's two songs that do that from my generation. I Want to Know What Love Is. You just stop and you're crying over your cereal. I do want to know what love is. Like you really do. Here I am at the age that I am still asking that question because it's kind of, this amorphous, invisible thing.
Right.
But it's something that every single creature on the planet, like your cat wants love, your dog certainly wants love, every person that we know wants love, and yet it's so hard to define. And then the other song is by Nirvana, and I think also Guns N' Roses, the song "Sweet Child of Mine." So maybe there's three.
What's the Nirvana song?
The Nirvana song for me, and you're just gonna laugh, but it's the I'm forgetting the name of it now. Never mind. I like that one. Just the riff in it. It can always just stop me. But probably almost all of Nirvana songs. Nobody can make fun of Nirvana.
A lot of angst.
When my kids were little, they were learning rock, paper, scissors. And I didn't want to lose, and so they were still vulnerable and gullible. And so I would say, you do rock, paper, scissors, or rock, paper, papers like this. I would do rock, paper, N, like the sign language N. And they're like, what is that, Mom? I'm like, Nirvana. Nothing beats Nirvana. So
that's great. You make up your own rules for the game.
Rock, paper, scissors, Nirvana. And they would always say, well, what does that mean? I'm like, well, nothing beats Nirvana. So that's what it was. So if I've given them any weird thing that they can take into their own relationships, it's our version of rock, paper, scissors, Nirvana. But one of the things we were going to talk about today was this article in the New York Times, and I wanted to tell everyone about this. It's called Why Aren't More People Marrying? Ask Women What Dating Is Like. And it came out on November 11th, 2023. And it was written as an opinion piece by Anna Louise Sussman. She writes for the New York Times on gender, dating, and reproduction. And as soon as I saw the title of that article and I knew that we were having the podcast, I'm like, oh, well, we absolutely have to discuss this. And so I read it, and a lot of the things that I felt inside, I felt so vindicated when I saw that other women were having the exact same experience that I'm having and I have had for, a dozen years now, that the old Flannery O'Connor story, a good man is hard to find. Mm-hmm. And so when I read it, I just felt like just jumping from the rooftops going, it's not just me. It isn't that there's, necessarily something quote unquote wrong with me. It's that I'm picky. And why wouldn't I be? Why wouldn't anybody be picky?
Well, is it really picky? Like when you say picky, I'm thinking, all right, so you don't like green beans, you don't like collards, you know what I mean? I think it means that you know exactly what you want.
Yeah.
And those, people they're not fitting that bill. They're just not there. And so why would you settle? Why would you settle for almost happiness?
I think a lot of people do.
Sure.
Probably a lot of it. Desperation, insecurity, loneliness. A lot of it's financial. I go out and do things on my own. As I told you earlier, the only thing I don't do alone is hike. I don't feel safe hiking alone.
Yeah.
And so I created a women's hiking group, and we always have, a minimum 2 people to go or the outing is canceled. But so far, every single time we've scheduled the hikes for someone to go with us. And then I'm not afraid to go to dinner alone. I challenged myself this year to go to a concert alone. I'd never done it before. And John Mayer, I love John Mayer. I think he's just a genius. His lyrics, his delivery, his vibe, like everything about his music, I love. And so he was coming to Pittsburgh, which is about a 4-hour drive. And I thought, So I invited a lot of my friends, and people who are just not into John Mayer like I am, which their loss. I don't know how you cannot love John Mayer, but whatever. I'm a music snob, I guess.
Who's John Mayer?
You want to run through the halls of your high school. He has the song "Why Georgia Why," which is a beautiful song, and then his album was called "Room for Squares." And he does a lot on acoustic guitar. He's a virtuoso on guitar.
Yeah, he's an amazing guitar player.
He really, really is. If you don't know him, highly recommend checking him out. And he was touring with Dead and Company. Told this was the last year that he was touring with them. But he was doing a solo acoustic tour. And so I thought, well, no one wants to go with me. Am I going to sit home and sulk that I didn't get to go to this? Or I'm just going to, straighten up and go. And I did. I drove to Pittsburgh. I checked myself into a very nice hotel, totally treated myself, dressed up. I mean, I did it up. I did the hair, the nails, the makeup, the nice sparkly shirt. And I had a blast. It was so much fun. And I admit, when I was first waiting in line outside, it was at PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. Great venue, by the way. And I was the only person alone that I could see. I was looking everywhere. I'm like, am I the only person here alone? Yep, I was the only person alone.
Yeah, that's not common.
I was not going to be sad about it. It turned out to be the perfect concert to see alone because it was an acoustic set.
Sure.
So there was not a lot of high-fiving and,
Right. You're enjoying the vibe, the music,
yes.
The atmosphere.
It was he had J.P. Saxe to open for him, and I didn't know about J.P. Saxe. Well, now I love J.P. Saxe. But it was a very chill vibe, acoustic set, and he spoke very intimately to the audience. And so I remember just thinking, I have to do this again, because as a teenager, I would go to a movie alone if none of my friends wanted to see the film. I did go hiking alone as a teenager. I do dine alone a lot. I'll just take, you never see me without a book. Like today, I've got Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. I just started that. And then my Bible is the Mary Oliver poetry. I don't go, anywhere without a book of poetry to read. So I can entertain myself. I think nowadays people that do things alone, it's their phone. You can just read something on the phone. But so it doesn't bother me to just go somewhere by myself. But the thing about relationships, you do need to be picky, like you said. And if you're just settling, I feel like you get one life and you're choosing not to live it fully. And I think when you settle in a relationship, I think who you marry, if you marry, is the single most important decision you can make, because think of everything that flows from that. What your children are going to be like, how tall they're going to be, what their genetic inheritance is going to be, what your money philosophy is like. And when I got married, I was really young and didn't really know to ask certain questions. And so I think now that I am divorced and I've forged this really interesting life since then, after a hard rebuilding, I am picky. And I don't know how you guys feel. Like, for the male side of things, is it the same? Is it the same thing? Evan, you're single. Like, are you finding the same type of frustrations that I had, in your generation, in your gender?
Like, in terms of what? Like, in terms of just like
not being able to find what you're looking for.
I mean, for like a period of time, there was a moment in sophomore year where I hit like a really rough patch. But I think like over the years, I just accepted it, and now I'm just miserable. That's just
You're very honest.
Yeah. That's what happens when you're miserable. You just have to be honest and stop lying.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm not miserable, at least unless I'm in denial. I'm not in therapy, so who knows? Maybe
I'm just miserable about a lot of things. I don't think it's just like the relationship. I think I'm at a point where I'm just like I need to focus on, staying sober, getting my mental stuff in check.
Mm-hmm.
That's wise.
Yeah,
that's really wise. I think a lot of people they don't realize the importance of self-care and of being right with yourself.
Yes.
If you're not right with yourself, you can't be right with somebody else in a relationship. It just can't.
You can't, because
you can fake it, but you can't.
Because then they're becoming something that is not fair to them to be. They're becoming, I hate when I see in movies, oh, you complete me. Like, one of my favorite movies is the movie Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger. But there's this scene in an elevator where this couple is a deaf couple and they're doing a sign, and he did the thing where, you complete me. And Renee Zellweger's, I think, cousin in the movie was deaf, and Tom Cruise, said, what did they do? What did they say? And she said to Tom Cruise, you complete me. And I remember at the time just going, ugh, like, I hated that so much. And a lot of people took that as this,
and
like...
When did that movie come out again?
Oh, Lord,
92?
You're dating me. Don't you date me. How dare you?
I love that Hollywood is just like the only love that a deaf person could get is another deaf person.
Yeah, that's a good point. Especially here in Rochester, where we have the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. Actually, one of my good friends was dating someone who was deaf, so he certainly... It does exist out there in the world, like you said. But in that scene in the movie, they position it as this like romantic ideal, this goal to get to, that you're going to meet your other half. You're going to meet this piece of the missing puzzle. And I've always bristled against that, because I'm already a complete person. Another person isn't going to complete you. You have to complete yourself. And I think the work that you're doing for your sobriety, Evan, is part of that, right?
In a way, I think there's a lot of things I need to work on. Just getting a lot of my, because I'm working like a ton of jobs. I just graduated college. I'm broke. I gotta. That's just the life of every college student. Just trying to save up enough money and then hopefully do what I want to do. And then maybe if I get to a place where I'm good mentally, I'm good, I'm stable. Otherwise, I'm sober for a year. Maybe I'll go looking for it. But I don't want to burden some poor gal with my,
That's
SHIT.
So thoughtful.
Yeah.
Well, it's mature.
It's so mature.
You're already on the right path.
Mature. I don't know anybody, when I was your age, I don't know if anybody that I was friends with would have had the peace of mind or the thought to the clarity to actually say, why am I going to put my luggage onto you, like my baggage?
Yeah, and I actually have met in my dating life men who are in denial about their addictions, and I can tell. I met this guy who was a mountain biker and a year and a half ago, and I was so excited. We talked online for a number of weeks. It was mutual friends. And then we met, and great first date, just like, and I remember just feeling like excited, the butterflies. And then the next week we went out again, and it was like another person showed up. And I know he had been drinking. I could just tell. And I just, during the course of the date, I saw that he was very interested in my finances and interested in when I was going to be an empty nester, interested. So he was looking for a nurse with a purse. And I never went out with him again. It was just very disappointing. But
nurse with a purse.
Yes,
I've not heard that term, but yeah, I see that.
Yeah, well, you know what Evan said about taking a year to work on himself. That's what I did in Maine, in the coast of Maine. I went to Old Orchard Beach in Maine. I love it up there, and I sat at the ocean after a year of working on myself. When I first got divorced, we lost all of our pets. We lost our house, and I almost lost my life. I almost lost 2 of my kids in the attack and things that were going on in that horrible experience. And I was just a mess in every single way you could be a mess. The only thing I didn't have was I didn't have addiction to substances, but I had an addiction to working out and running, and I couldn't stop it to the point I was making myself too skinny. It was not good. I was like down to a size 2 and bony, and I was just like, I think I was trying to outrun the trauma.
Yeah.
And I was making myself literally, I know it probably some people are rolling their eyes, but you can actually be addicted to working out in an unhealthy way.
Yep.
And I got to the point, I didn't have an eating disorder. I never developed that. I still would eat, but I got to the point where I felt like if I didn't have the right cut of the tricep, if I didn't have the right abs, no one's going to love me. If I don't look perfect, I'm not going to be loved. And then I had a crooked nose, and I just became obsessed with getting, my nose fixed. And if you go back on my social media and look at my Facebook pictures, I'm turned to a certain angle in almost all my photos. And when I joined the fire department, a fellow firefighter commented one day, he said, "Why do you always have your head turned to the side in photos?" And I'm like, "Well, because I have a crooked nose and it looks better if I don't." And he's like, "No one can see it but you." Like the thing I had become.
I was going to say, I'm like, I don't even see what you're talking about.
Even I went to see a plastic surgeon to get it fixed, and he's like, "There's nothing there."
Nothing to fix.
I know. And I'm like, really? So I had this like skewed version of how I looked, and I became addicted to fixing it. And so I had to work on myself. I realized I'm a mess. Like I am good for nobody right now. And so I just had a year of no, I didn't want to go anywhere, didn't want to do anything, didn't want to date anybody, didn't want anybody around my kids. I pretty much begged my company to let me work from home. I became like, for me, and you know me, Scott, I'm an extrovert. I became an introverted, like little, I don't know, it was just PTSD, I guess.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So it makes me very picky. And this article in the New York Times, what they found is that women in particular are not finding men that, and this is to use the words in the article, it's not my sentiment, men who are on par with them. And I kind of bristled at that too, because it seems a little elitist. It seems that the women in the article, and there were 5,000 people that were surveyed in this survey, are looking for someone who's just as educated, if not more than they are. And I mean, Bill Gates doesn't have a college degree. I don't think you can measure the worth of somebody by if they're both college educated. But I think what comes into play is the inferiority complex. And I wanted to ask you guys about that. Like, the men that I have dated, I earn more than, but it doesn't bother me, and I don't go around talking about that. But somehow I think they find out what I do for a living, and they kind of figure that out. And some of them have felt, I don't want to say intimidated, but they don't like that they're not the main earner. I mean, talk to me a little bit about that from a male perspective.
I can speak from experience that, so my wife, like I said, we've been married 21 years. She's always been the breadwinner in our family. Always.
Yeah.
Since day one. And I think at first I had sort of an old school kind of philosophy or outlook. And I got rid of that real quick because I realized it was silly.
It's antiquated.
It's
thinking.
antiquated. Exactly. And I think, people make jokes about the male ego and stuff like that. But those, like you said earlier, when we were talking about stereotypes. You say you shouldn't use stereotypes, but there's some.
They persist for a reason.
They persist for a reason, and that stereotype of the male ego, I think, still hangs on. The guy either wants to be in charge, wants to feel bigger than the little lady, the little woman, and that's just not how it should be. You're a partnership, and as long as the two of you get along in a way that makes you both happy, and I know you don't like the term complete me, but with my wife, she was Kelly. She was working. She has a great job. She works in medicine. She can work pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
We moved back and forth from Rochester to Florida because I was raised in South Florida, so that's where my home base was. We moved back and forth probably 4 times, each time for a better job for me, because I felt insecure about how much I was making. I mean, it was a little bit like we actually needed the money. It was like, all right, we found a better job.
Yeah.
But it was really about, for that short amount of time, it was, or at least for the first half of our marriage, I always worried about that. I always worried about the fact that she makes more money than me. Not once has she ever held that over my head.
Yeah.
And I had to get over myself. I had to feel like, what's the difference? Like, who cares?
Yeah. But is that a generational thing? Like, Evan, and you're right out of college. Are you feeling that way? Are your cohorts feeling that way?
Like in their relationships?
Like for you, if you start dating someone, let's say next year, and she's making, like a lot more money than you, are you going to be cool with that, or is that going to make you feel?
She's going to be buying dinner. Yeah.
Well, that's another thing. Like
God!
I recently went on a date.
The thousands of dollars I could save.
Yeah, but I recently went on a date, and it was so cool because it was understood that we were both going to pay our half, and that's what we did. We split it even, and there was not even any awkwardness. We just evenly split. So that's starting to be more acceptable.
Yeah, doing it Dutch.
But some generations, it's like, of course, and when I've dated older men, they get offended if I try to pull up my wallet. I'm like, I don't want to have you like take care of me. I contribute here. I'm. Well,
I also think it's also just a sense of taste. Like I just think that like some people, whether you're a guy or a gal, so they have like their own little, they have their own little particular thing that they like to do or that they believe in, and to me, I don't think it's wrong. I think it works for some people. I think some people, like, if they believe in a soulmate, sometimes they do find a soulmate. Some people don't. I think really it just depends on the individual. And if you really want to figure it out, I mean, I would say just go through the ringer and just see what's out there.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, I have a friend just a friend, and he's like, very wealthy. And I recently took him out for dinner and I paid for it. And he said, I'm not used to anybody paying for me. And so some of that can be a form of care. Like I was showing. Because
he's wealthy, he's used to him paying?
Yeah. And so I wanted someone to treat him, to take him. And so I treated him, and he just hadn't had that. There's a certain point of nurturing, but when it comes to dating, I feel like there's certain regions of the country, like I'm a Southerner, and there's nobody I grew up with, no male that would allow me to pay. You're not a good man if you don't, pay.
I was taught that too. I still kind of do it. Like if I go on a date, tomorrow, I'll pay for it, like for the first date. And I think it's just like, I don't know. It may be like it may be a traditional thing, like in terms of like the traditional gender roles. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, if the gal really wants to pay for it, I mean, I won't let her the first date, but maybe later on.
But what if she asks you out? If she asks you out, doesn't it seem more reasonable that she would pay?
If she asked me out?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if she said, "Hey, Evan, let's go out to dinner," then it's like, all right, you invited me, so you're paying.
Maybe, but then I don't know. I think I don't know. Maybe I just think about I just have my mother's voice in my head, and just like you pay for the first date, you leave the door open for her, all this other stuff.
But see, that's all related, and I had this conversation a few years ago with somebody that turned into a really bad argument, like on Facebook.
Wow.
And
you got to stay away from those Facebook arguments.
Oh yeah,
Zuck's little den.
Yes, it was talking about opening doors for opening doors for a woman and stuff. And there was the argument that if I open a door for a woman, it's not because she's a woman. It's because I'm polite to someone I'm with.
Right.
And if there's someone if I'm walking with someone and we're walking up to the door, I open the door for whoever it is. It doesn't matter if it's a woman. And the person I was speaking to, who happened to have been a guy, was very pissed off that I was somehow denigrating the woman as to implying that she was not capable of opening the door.
She can do it herself, Scott.
Yeah,
she can do it herself. What are you doing?
Okay, now here's the thing. I like it when someone, I don't care what their gender is, opens a door for me. I like it when people show care like that.
Yeah.
But there are some women I've seen that just get, like you said, absolutely upset. But I remember somewhere we were, and a person was walking with me in a crowd, and it started, I think it was CMAC. And a man I didn't even know, just kind of saw that I was getting crushed, and he just put his arm around my waist. I don't know this man, and he guided me out away from the crush. And it was so nice, but my friend who was with me at the time said, "Didn't you feel strange? There was this strange man that came in and like put his arm around your waist and guided you through." I'm like, I had my hands full. I had my autistic son with me. I take him to a lot of concerts. It was nice. So I think it's situational.
Yeah.
But, one of the things I thought of is in another article, there is a trend where more college degrees are going to women than men. And since NAFTA, so during NAFTA, it used to be, I come from a factory town. I'm a factory girl, like the Rolling Stones song, factory girl. They used to have, you got your high school degree and then you went straight to work, and you could work at the factory and make a decent living. And then when more and more women started going to college, the price of things, always adjust. You've got 2-income families now. So now our economics are based on 2-income families. So there's a lot of people, these experts are saying that, children fare better when they come from families where the parents are married and there's 2 incomes in the family. And I can say that for every statistic like that, there's always the outlier. And I certainly, when I was a press secretary in Congress, I out-earned my PhD educated husband by far. And I would come home from working like 12-hour days, and I still had to do the cooking and the cleaning. He was just absolutely not pulling his weight. And I said to myself one day, why do I need him if he's not going to celebrate me on my birthday? He's not going to support anything for the family finances. He's not going to help me raise the kids. I'm having to hire help I had a lawn person. I had a house cleaner.
Yeah.
What was he doing?
That's just a jerk.
Yes, and that's why he's my ex.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he's my ex. But I think that one of the things that the article said was that, and I think the title of the article was "The Men Are Not All Right." And I have a mother of 3 sons, and so I kind of bristle at that too. I'm like, well, I think my kids are doing okay. I've raised them with love and care. But what the article really meant is that we have depleted the structure of making it as a provider unless you have a college degree. Like, we've taken away the it's not internships. That's another word I'm trying to think of. For your apprenticeships.
Apprenticeships, yeah.
That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. So we really need electricians. We need plumbers. We need people that are doing the skilled trades, and we need it to be affordable because college is not for everyone. One of my children chose not to go to college, and that was their choice to do so.
Yeah.
But we've eliminated that as a pathway to be the stereotypical good provider.
Right. That's one thing I love about Mike Rowe. You know who Mike Rowe is? He used to be on the History Channel, and he did Dirty Jobs and those kind of shows.
Yeah.
And he's been a big proponent of the trades. You don't have to go to college out of high school. You need to go and get your, learn a trade.
Yeah.
Be an HVAC technician, be a plumber, be a construction. I mean, there's good money. My whole family are in construction. My father was a general contractor. My brother's a general contractor. My other brother is a painting contractor. They've done really well for themselves.
I've always joked.
They worked hard, but
I've always joked with my children that if I should ever get married again, I want to marry a general contractor
because they can fix everything around the house.
Fix everything. I can fix most things, but I draw the line at plumbing and electric. I can't.
Right,
I can't
right,
do those.
right.
But I do think that there has been an erosion of that economic path in the generation that happened right after we were out of high school, Scott. Like there's something about that. And because high school, is no longer a guarantee that you'll have a good income, we've just eliminated that. And so I think the women that are getting their PhDs and are looking for a man to marry who also has his PhD, the slim pickings.
Yeah.
And I argue that it doesn't need to be that. I think that what you really need to focus on, what I focus on, is who they are as a person. Are they, like Evan said, are they working on themselves? Have they gotten to a place where they add to my life? And I've only had a year where I've really just been able to focus on that. And so far, I have not found it, but I'm not like out there looking desperately. And and I never will be, I'm not desperate. But one of my friends said, you have to find love you have to make it a job to find love. And I always bought into that Hollywood thing, like it'll happen when you least expect it, or you'll just be...
When you're not looking.
I'll be in Wegmans picking out a head of lettuce, and he's there. And this is a funny story to end on.
It might. I mean, you never know. You never really know.
I'm going to Wegmans after I leave here.
Is it organic lettuce, though? I mean,
of course it
is.
Does
it matter? Okay.
Yes. So I was in Wegmans right after the pandemic, and there was a shortage of everything back then, you know, and I decided I was going to bake. And so I go to the Wegmans, and I was looking at flour, and I wanted to get this specific brand of flour that's supposedly really good for baking cakes. And my son with autism is obsessed with cakes. And so I was looking at this flour probably longer than one would normally look at flour. And I was dressed up that day. I was headed to somewhere. I think I was going to a concert. So I had on my black leather jacket and my black high-heeled boots. I looked good. I had my hair all sleeked out. And this guy was like staring at me, from like way down at the spice aisle. I'm like, oh boy, here he goes. I could just see him coming a mile away. And he looked like he had been rode hard and put up with it. Like I know he had been out late partying. He looked rough. And he comes up to me and he starts picking up the flour beside me. He's like, oh, she's looking at flour. I should look at flour. So he's like looking
at this flour?
Oh, what's bromad? Like all this stuff. And he finally goes, excuse me, could you recommend a type of flour for me? I'm like, so this is the new pickup aisle, that sort of thing. But I didn't feel it.
Trying to hit you up with a Riz.
I actually did. I was very kind. I told him what I knew about the types of flour in life. But he was trying to ask me out, and he couldn't get the nerve to do it. I could just tell, he like I said, he looked like he had pulled an all-nighter, that sort of thing. And he didn't have the nerve he never did go ahead and do it, but I know he wanted to. I'm not good at that next part, like handing the person my business card. I'm not good. And my girlfriend's like, oh, just give him your number. I am old-fashioned in that regard. I just can't do it. But that,
taking the initiative to make that leap. You want him to ask.
I do, and that's where I'm weird, because I do all these other things myself. I started a company. I've published books. I've worked in Congress. I've been a firefighter. I've started Sous Chef Academy with New York Kitchen. Like I do stuff, but when it comes to romance, I don't want to be seen as the chaser. And a friend of mine, he's on me all the time, like, you've got to just ask him out, ask him over. Like, don't want to. I don't know where that comes from, but I don't get asked out a lot. And I'm like, am I intimidating, or am I just turning men off? Like, am I not what people want? So there's this weird, thing inside of me. But then on the other hand, I do want someone that adds to my life and has confidence enough, but not to the point where they're cocky and they're a player. And what happens with me is the type of guys that are confident enough to ask me out end up almost always being players. And I don't want that. This guy in the flower aisle, I was totally intimidating to him. I could just tell, but he really, really wanted to. If I had been interested in him, maybe I would have handed him my business card. But the other day, I actually did it. I actually gave someone my card the other day, and they didn't get the hint. I'm like, okay, I'm probably aiming outside of my echelon. I don't know what's going on there, but I don't know. I feel like for me, more and more, because of the age that I'm at, most of the men in my age range are already married. And if they're single, they're usually single for a reason. And I am too. I am single for a reason.
And it's not an easy situation. So what you've described to me right now in this episode is the fact that first of all, there's no formula. There's no right answer either. So it's, we're talking about the different gender roles and things like that, and being old fashioned and the guy taking control. And some women want that, some women don't. And so looking at it from the guy's point of view, a lot of times it's like, we don't know what to do.
Yeah, we don't know what the hell's going on.
We really don't.
What do
I'm
you
friends
want?
with some guys that that expect the women to seek them out, and
Really?
sometimes they don't get. Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if it's because they're insecure, or if it's because they're afraid to ask them out. They're afraid to get rejected. But I mean, that is the reason why a lot of guys expect that. But you can't do that. You gotta. Sometimes you just gotta, pull your boots up by the bootstrap and just
So you like it when a woman asks you out? Don't you have in the back of your
I love
mind?
that. I love that.
I would wish for that. I don't. It
Really?
never
I
happens.
love that. That's the best ever.
It's a huge compliment. It's a huge compliment.
Not only that, but for me, I want a woman that's smarter than me. I want a woman that is more successful than I am.
It sounds like you already have that. No,
I
just
do.
kidding.
I do.
can't handle that.
I do.
I don't know if I can handle it. I'm kidding.
I like it because I like my wife is a role model for me.
Yeah.
Like I want to be as good as she is with people.
Yeah.
Like I think about that when we're out. I kind of clam up. I kind of, I'm
Really?
like,
That's
yeah.
interesting.
I'm kind of like, and she walks into a room and she's like, "Bip-a-dip-a-dip-a-dip." She can make friends with anybody.
Yeah.
And it takes me a while to do that. I've been working on it.
Yeah.
Years ago, forget it. I would be like in the corner. And
I'd be in a room drinking.
no, well, me too. I mean, January, 6 years sober, boom.
Yay.
But
Congratulations.
that was me too. It was like, all right, well, I feel so out of whack in this room with people that I can't relate to, so I'm going to go get drunk.
Yeah.
And to be my best
But
self.
I think for a woman, though, there's
Same.
this cultural thing like, oh, she's a, what's the word, a cougar. I hate that phrase. I hate that thing. So that
Well, that's only if you're going after, 20-year-old
younger dude.
yeah, but
dudes.
it's kind of morphed. Now if a woman is actually asking a guy out, there's that connotation that she's desperate. There's something about
really?
that. Yes, there's still that, the judging that she's, she can't get a date on her own, so she has to ask guys out. I don't like it. Like I said, I was raised Southern. I like it when a guy opens the door. I want the guy to be the one asking out. Now, if I'm in an established relationship, I'll certainly be the leader. I'll take over the social calendar and, ask them out. But I've only asked a guy out one time in my whole life, and I was much, much younger. And he said no, and I've never forgotten it. And every now and then I'll look him up on social media, and I'm like, whew, dodged a bullet. Like it was not good.
It was your intuition being correct.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But
Curiosity.
I felt so much sympathy for men because it hurt me at the time. I'm like, I felt like I was like a real good match for him, and his life has not turned out well. So I'm really.
But I also
glad.
think that's one of the problems in our society is that they think that's going to be the end all be all, and if they get rejected by that one person, that they put that in their head that everyone's going to reject them when that's simply not the case.
I did the same thing. My self-esteem was really in the toilet because one person did me wrong, and then from then on in, I was like, I'm the problem. And it's not.
Like the Taylor Swift song, "It's me."
Exactly.
I'm the problem. I know you love that,
Exactly.
Evan. You love that Taylor Swifty stuff.
I have no problem with Taylor Swift. Just stay out of football. Just
No. Whoa.
Stop it.
Taylor Swift
You
can
don't
have
like
football.
You're
How
not
do you
watching
know?
football
She
for the right
watched-
reasons.
She
Just
watched
stop
football. She loves
Dude.
it.
There's nothing cooler than think about how awesome it is to be that couple.
Yeah.
This dude is playing NFL football. He's on top of the world.
He manifests her. They have a video of him talking about years ago. They said, who would your celebrity crush kiss be with? And he said Taylor Swift.
There you go.
Years ago. He manifests her.
Awesome.
Do you believe in manifestation?
I do. I didn't
do.
used to.
Really?
My daughter has really got me into it, and my best friend has also got me into it. And they said, what you start thinking of is what will actually subconsciously be your goal. So I do believe that. And so that's part of the reason for Sparks of Love. I'm going to manifest finding out what love is. So I do believe in that. And I also believe
and
in
a good man is hard to find.
And a
It is
good man
very
is
good.
hard to find, and I'm single for a reason. And go Travis.
Maybe that's
and
why I was an
and Taylor.
alcoholic. I manifested that I wanted to drink, and I
Or
just drank.
now you're manifesting that you
Yeah,
no longer
yeah, yeah.
are.
Now
But
I am.
I'm here for the Kelsey and Swift marriage, so I'm all for that. So
Well, this was fun. This was
It was
a
fun.
great conversation. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that we're going to delve more into it.
yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for joining Sparks of Love. We'll see you next time.